Is the right people giving you insight, feedback, and advice? Do you even think getting insight, feedback, and advice from anybody else is even important in any of your personal and professional decisions? Is that even something that you consider valuable? Well, first and foremost, if that's not even something that you even consider valuable, maybe this episode isn't for you, and maybe it is, because maybe you need to understand why. So let's say you do or do not consider getting insight, feedback, and advice from someone on your professional and personal decisions and actions is important. Regardless, the first thing you need to do is make sure you're getting it from the right source. One thing that I heard from, I'm in the South, I call her mama. You might call her mother. But one thing that I remember hearing from my mama that I took with me and still carry with me to this day is all truths are parallel. All truths are parallel, and that's truth. Truths. What does that mean? It means typically if something works well in one way, more than likely it works well in another way, regardless of what it is. So one of the examples that I recall my mother using is, she's a devout Christian. And one of the terms in the Christian religion is the light. Jesus, God is the light. Follow the light. Even that old horror movie, Walk into the Light, Caroline. It's an indicator of safety, right? And the comparison she made was, we were at this a very busy highway, and there are ways. I think it had 3 lanes going each way, 3 lanes going east, 3 lanes going west. And there are several ways that you can get into this, and I call it a highway, but it's just one of those high trafficked streets. Just to give you a little, Dunn Avenue, which I don't know how high the traffic is on a regular basis in Dunn Avenue, but this was one of those times of day where there was a lot of cars going left and right. And they have options to where you can get onto that street without going into a traffic light. You could get onto that. You could turn out of one of those plazas right into there. But is that the safest way to do it? And depending on how much traffic is happening at that time, will you be sitting there for a short period or probably a long time, especially if you're trying to go across one set of lanes to go to the other way? So it may be not the safest route. You might get into an accident attempting that maneuver. Also, you may have to wait longer than you would have, waiting for a safe entrance to attempt that maneuver, where you could have just went straight to that traffic light and waited for the green. And you could have safely got onto that busy street because the cars would have been stopped right there. And even though sometimes traffic lights are long, at least you know it ain't going to be that long. It's set on a timer or on a trigger to where you can reasonably assume that you're going to be able to make this turn sooner than later. Whereas trying to get onto that busy street Might take you longer. All truths are parallel. One time I was listening to a podcast from Mr. Wonderful. I can't think of his Connolly, I think that's his last name, but he's Mr. Wonderful on the Shark Tank. I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard of that show. Damon John, Mark, the guy that owns the basketball team, the woman that does a lot of home shopping networks and all of that stuff. You know, they're basically very wealthy people who invest in companies. And the companies come on and give them a pitch. And if they like the pitch, they negotiate and try to outbid each other on who can get this person's business. And if they don't like the business, they turn around and tell them why they didn't like it. And of course, the person leaves with their tail between their legs, maybe. But Mr. Wonderful, he was asked, because what made him very wealthy is he was able to sell one of his learning companies for over $1 billion. And keep in mind, he wasn't the only learning company, right? He wasn't the only company that taught people, and I believe his thing was math and science. He wasn't the only learning company that taught people math and science, but he was able to sell his for over $1 billion. And somebody asked, they say, well, what separated your business from the other companies offering seemingly the same thing? And that's when he said, well, a lot of those businesses was doing something different than what I was doing. And why was I doing something different? He said, before I got into the education business, I was in the cat food business. And he said the owner of that business, when he first came there, broke it down to him, and he let him know that he had two different engines, two separate engines. And when we think of an engine, we think of something in a car that makes something move. And once again, that's tying into my all truths are parallel. Yeah, that engine, if that engine wasn't in that car, you would just have a very expensive paperweight. But once you put that engine in that car, it makes it move. And a lot of times you have a bunch of different cars, different models, different colors, different shapes, but they have the same engine in it. It's what is put on top of that engine that makes it different, that allows people to charge different things. The same thing worked in the cat food business, to where the guy informed him that all of this cat food, we only have two engines. One engine is beef, one engine is tuna. That's it. Beef, tuna. What makes it different, what allows us to charge different prices, have different products, is the flavor we put on top of that tuna. Like the color and the make and the model that they put on top of that car. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of Lexus and Corollas got the same engine. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of Fords and a lot of Mercurys got the same engine. But it's the outside is what makes it either a premium product, a medium product, or a low product. So he says, when we put a certain flavors on top of these engines, we're able to charge different amounts. We're able to charge more on certain things, even though it's really the same thing. We just put another flavor on it. And we're able to present to the people who buy our products that we have a multitude of products, not just two, that they can choose from. Same engine. So Mr. Wonderful said, he took that knowledge that he got from that. And he said when he got into the education business, what they would do is they would pay all of this money to build a new course every time. Every time, build a completely new course. And one of the things about math and science that a lot of people like is it don't change. You can burn all of the math books And all of the science books, you can burn them all into oblivion. You can delete all of the data. And the way math and science works is you're going to get the same stories. You're going to get the same outcome. If it's all going and then people start that process again, it's going to all add up to be the same thing eventually than it was before it was completely deleted. So he said, why are we paying to always create a brand new course when all we have to do is keep the same 2 courses we made, the same engines, and put a different flavor on it? So this time, instead of having a Mickey Mouse, because, you know, the education was for kids. So this time, instead of having Mickey Mouse teach the course, now we got Goofy. And then for the next course, we got Daffy Duck. And then for the next course, we got Cinderella, right? You get the picture. Now he's able to present to the people who buy his product that he has a multitude of courses, not just 2, even though in actuality it's only 2 courses. But now he has a multitude of courses. And because he's able to get these people, he was able to acquire the licenses to have these people on the courses. And when somebody looked at his company compared to the other educational companies, they say, not only do we have a multitude of math and science courses, we have acquired the licenses to all of these well-known characters. All truths are parallel. He asked his former boss what was going on, why he did it, and then he was able to apply that to his new company that he started, and it was able to get its valuation to $1 billion plus, which of course led him to be able to do all of the things that he's doing now. Why am I telling you this? And how is it connected to the value of insight, feedback, and advice? This is how. So a lot of people, if you ask, hey, do you get insight? Do you solicit insight, feedback, and advice from people? And they'll say, of course I do. Of course. And my question is, do you really? Or are you just so used to just starting to talk and people automatically giving you their unsolicited advice, their unsolicited insight, their unsolicited feedback? You didn't ask for it. You just started to talk in a manner that seemed as if you wanted insight, feedback, and advice. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but people are just so used to following up with what they would do, how they would do it. Now, I used to be a fixer. And what a fixer is somebody that, you know, when I hear somebody coming to me and telling me their problems and their issues, at one point, because it still seems like they want some help, but at one point, without them even asking, I would provide that insight, that feedback, that advice. And maybe they, they might take it, they might not. But one thing about doing that without somebody asking you for it, sometimes what happens is they consider you to be a know-it-all. Sometimes what happens is they consider you to be controlling. Sometimes what happens is they consider you to be somebody who does not listen. And I can see how somebody might reach that conclusion. So this is a part of my personal development, my growth, is I've learned that if somebody is coming to me talking about their problems or issues that they're going through, I just listen. And if necessary, I ask good questions. If I'm confused, if I need more information, I just ask questions. And what happens a lot of times is they never ask me what I think. They never ask me what I would do. They just wanted to vent. And I allowed them that opportunity to do that. And a lot of times when people get the chance to vent, they can work out their own problems. They don't need no insight. Maybe. Sometimes they don't. I have some people that I call and I vent to. Now here's the difference, folks. The thing is, you get a certain demographic when you only get a certain level of information when you only listen to the insight, feedback, and advice. And when I say listen, I don't mean that you're going to do what they said you should do, because a lot of times when you give unsolicited advice, people, they have a habit of not following it because they, sometimes it to them, like I said, it comes across as if you're controlling, if you didn't listen, and that you a know-it-all. So when you only hear that side from those type of people, those fixers, and I'm still a recovering fixer, right? I'm trying to tell you, it's tough. It's to have the knowledge I have and to have the experience I have and to be able to just listen to people, and I know exactly what they need to do in order to get out of that situation or better their current situation and not say anything, is one of the, man, it's definitely a practice and discipline. But I do it. But what happens is when you only get that side from those people who don't know, who don't have that enlightenment of what happens when you give that unsolicited advice, you're only going to get a certain level of advice. It may or may not be premium advice, but if somebody is giving unsolicited advice on a regular basis, chances are the advice, even if it is premium, you're not going to take it. Just psychological reasons. You're just not going to listen. And I've already said why you're probably not going to listen. But here's what happens. There are a lot of people who think like me. There are a lot of people who think better than me. There are a lot of people who think, I'm 35. There are a lot of people who thought like me at 35, but now at 55, they're on a whole nother level. And no matter how hard I try, I can't never think the way they think based off of the knowledge and experience that they gain in that additional 20 years of living. So this is what happens. What happens is when you encounter those people and those people are in your inner circle, or those people that you've come across and you're talking to them, venting or just sharing your current situation, pay attention to the ones who are just, looking, smiling, asking questions. Pay special attention to the people who aren't giving you unsolicited advice. And you need to get in the habit of saying, following that up with, after you said what you needed to say, what do you think? Or How would you handle this situation if you were me? Watch what happens. Watch what happens. Because a lot of those people that you're talking to, they're not in your industry, they're not in your situation. But based off of something that they've dealt with in their industry, in their situation, it might apply to what you're dealing with in your industry, in your situation. All truths are parallel. And no matter how hard you tried, it probably would have never crossed your mind to put a different flavor on this engine. Different flavor on this beef, on this tuna. Different characters on this math, on this science course. But because you explicitly asked, you solicited that additional intel, that additional data, that additional information, you're the better for it. I personally had that situation to where I'm trying to figure something out. One thing that I like to do, and you know, I recommend that you do, is find somebody that isn't a fixer, but they're great in sales. Somebody who's able to listen, who's able to ask good questions, but they're great in sales. It doesn't have to have any type, whatever they're good in sales at doesn't have to have anything to do with what you currently do, what your current problem is. But people who are great in sales, they know people. They know scenarios, they know rebuttals. They know how to set up a conversation to where they get little, if any, rebuttals at all. What are the takeaways? All truths are parallel. What works in one situation, scenario, industry, business, typically works in other scenarios, industries, businesses. Look for people who don't give unsolicited advice. Now, sometimes it's hard. Like when people have this knowledge and education, it's very hard not to bust out with the solution, because sometimes I slip up. But pay attention to the ones where you're venting, you're ranting, you're raving, and they're just listening attentively and asking good questions when necessary. That should be your cue to say, well, what do you think? How would you handle this situation if you were me? And see what happens. You've been listening to the Entreprenudist podcast, a place to hear real entrepreneurs and business owners bear it all. My name is Randolph Love III. I help business owners and homeowners avoid financial catastrophe and have the option of retiring comfortably after only 10 to 15 years or less. This is the Entreprenudist podcast.